Um, so last year I taught with Mrs. Jenkins. I think many of you know her, is that right?
I know her.
You know her, good. Yes. And she is one of the 3 people who brought the Chinese immersion programs here from Utah. And she taught in this immersion programs for 10 years. So she has lots of experiences. But one thing she kept emphasizing was that actually the Chinese immersion program is an accelerated program. And here's the reason why. Because after teaching here for a year, I totally agree with her, okay? Because in a regular first grade class, their 2 core subjects are English and math. They'll do social studies, they'll do science and art. And their average class size is about 16 to 18. But in our classes, Chinese immersion program class, we do Chinese, math, English, and we need to find time to do social studies, art, and science. And our average class size is 28. This year is better. Last year is 30, okay? So it was hard. So we have more core subjects to cover in the same amount of time. And what's even more challenging is math is taught in Chinese. Why it is challenging? Because Chinese is a hard language. Do you agree with that? Yeah, Chinese is hard. So today, I asked my husband to come and share a little. He has been teaching Chinese and English for over 25 years, and he is a Chinese professor at BYUI. So you can just tell us a little bit about the nature of Chinese and what some of the challenges your kids might face this year. Okay, well maybe for the rest of the Chinese programs. Okay, thank you.
So happy to be here on spousal duty tonight. Chinese is hard. That's just kind of a given, but I'd like to talk a little bit about why it's hard. As Americans, I don't know that we do foreign language very well, right? It's something maybe we take a couple years in high school and then that's all we do. But with Chinese, there's a council called the American Council for Teaching Foreign Languages. It's a council set up by the federal government. And they've gone through and rated all of the languages throughout the world in terms of the difficulty for Americans to pick up. There's 4 different categories. Chinese is in category 4, which is the hardest. Spanish is in category 1. So to give you a different, an idea of what they're up against, to get to a certain level of proficiency in Chinese or in Spanish, they need about 500 hours of exposure time. So that's speaking, practicing, listening to it, whatever. In the aggregate, once they get to about 500 hours, then they start to hit a level of fluency. To get to that same level of fluency in Chinese, they need 2,200 hours. So it's 4 times the amount of effort or time to get to the same level of proficiency in Chinese. The nice thing about this is if you know, hey, we need to do 2,200 hours, every minute that your child or every hour that your child is engaged in Chinese, then is ticking away at that total, which means that they're accruing fluency at a faster rate. So the closer they get to 2,200, the faster they'll become fluent. A couple of challenging things about Chinese. With Spanish, sometimes as Americans we think, just add an O on the end of the word, you're good to go, or if you're not, at least they'll understand, right? That doesn't work in Chinese. One of the things that's hard is the 5 tones. In English, we have our own way of speaking. Every language has their own intonation. If we jump into Spanish and we just keep talking like an American, like donde está el baño, they're going to understand. But in Chinese, if you don't do tones, then comprehension drops super fast. So one thing you could help your child with is just honing in on the tones. Hey, are you saying the tones correctly? The other thing is, can you put your mic? The other thing is the writing system. When I teach new beginners at the university level, we start learning pinyin, which is the romanization system, right? It's using English letters to represent the sounds in Chinese. That's not a good idea in the first grade because they're still learning or establishing their foundation in English for, phonics and the alphabet, learning how to read and sight words and so forth. And so what happens in the immersion program then is they will jump straight into characters. So looking at the characters, recognizing them. Tonight they were looking for their name, like, hey, I think that's my name, maybe it is my name. So there's a challenge right there for them. Let's go on to the next slide. So you might think to yourself, okay, well, as long as they're just in the classroom, they're going to pick it up naturally. If they hear good Chinese, they're going to be speaking Chinese in no time. It's actually not an even ratio of input to output. So listening and reading are your input, speaking and writing are your output. If we read 10 books of literature, we're not going to be writing good books of literature once we're done with that. And so you can see you need a lot of listening to equal a little bit of speaking. So just as an example, maybe if you have 100 units of listening, or you listen to something 100 times, then you're going to keep going. You're going to maybe get 5 to 10. So the ratio may be like 100 to 5 to 10. So if they hear ni hao, ni hao, ni hao 100 times, then one of these times they're going to come to class and say, 老师你好, right? And they're going to finally start to speak. So the more they can listen and hear Chinese, the faster they're going to grow and be able to speak it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Another analogy could be watering a plant. How much water does it take to get a plant to grow? Just the ratio of water to growth in a plant, totally disproportionate. And so this watering then is the hearing Chinese, and then the plant growth is speaking. Let's go to the next slide. A couple of myths that we have with Americans and learning languages. And they're like, yeah, Chinese is hard, but seriously, they go up to the immersion program, they're just going to pick it up lickety-split, right? It's going to be super easy because they picked up English really well. But if you think about it, your child was born, and then how long do we speak to our children before we get dad, mama coming out? Maybe a year and a half. So that's a lot of input in terms of listening for them to start to produce English. So it doesn't necessarily come easily. And another reason is we think, oh, well, if they're in the immersion program, they're just going to be speaking Chinese all the time. They're going to turn to their classmates and say, hey, you need to go to the bathroom, I need to go to the bathroom, let's go to the bathroom together, all in Chinese. But it doesn't really happen like that. So what normally happens is path of least resistance. What's the easiest way to say what I want to say? And that's going to be English right now. And so they're going to be turning to English every chance they get. So this is a challenge here. The other challenge would be if you think, how many of you think, I don't speak Chinese, therefore I don't know really how to help my child, right? There is that misconception, I'll call it. Because we'll talk about it in just a second on how you can help your child be really successful in Chinese. Let's go to the next one. First, let's look at this video. This is a video of neurological connection. So the way that they get fluent is they start to build that network in their brain. You can see some, I don't know that this is, you can see here's some neurons. They're going to start to spread out and they're going to connect. So if I turn to her and I say ni hao, what are you going to say? Ni hao. Yep. And she did a great job. She paused for 1 or 2 seconds as she was thinking, right? So that connection is there, but it's maybe a little shaky. The more she practices that connection is going to become firmer and firmer until it's just going to be instant. Let's go on to the next one. You have to hit the arrow. So when your child is first born, there's not a lot of neurological connections. It's really kind of a lightweight circuit. But the more they're exposed to it, the more complex that circuitry gets, and that's what we're looking for. So complex connections equals smart child, proficient child, speaks good Chinese, interacts in Chinese, and is very willing. If it becomes super easy for them to speak Chinese because they have that complex web of neurological connections, it's going to be instant when they're talking. Let's go to the next one. One last concept I'd like to share with you. When I get students in the university, a lot of us think that learning a language is just another subject in school. Therefore, it's a concept-based thing like math. Hey, 2 plus 2, you put 2 M&Ms with 2 M&Ms, you're going to get 4 M&Ms. If I understand that concept now, I can replicate it over and over again. It's not like that. Chinese is more like a skill, such as playing the piano or another musical instrument, or even doing a sport. I can know how to swing a bat, I know how to run, doesn't mean I'm cranking homers every time I'm up to bat, right? Or if you're in the first grade, it doesn't mean you remember where first base is and you're running in the straight line there. So just like if your child is learning piano, it wouldn't make sense to say, we only do piano at piano class. But when you're at home, we don't really do that kind of stuff, right? There's a lot of practice that goes in on the piano at home to get ready for lessons. And so similarly, I think she's going to be talking about a way that your child can practice 10 minutes every night in Chinese and get them to be where they need to be as they go along. So.
So my turn again. So this year, I'll be asking each student to go home and practice Chinese for 10 minutes. Okay, so each day they can practice from Monday to Friday, or even better, from Monday to Saturday. 10 minutes every day. And for the first month, I'll use YouTube videos to help your kids to review, because those are the things that we need to cover for the whole year. And those two Chinese characters, two on the both sides, they need to have a test before they graduate from the first grade. Okay, so I'm going to use the videos, and I compile a list, so you can just go there, and then you can just click. Or I'll send you more if you like the variety. Okay. And next, from the second month, we're going to do Mandarin matrix. And we have, and let me show you what Mandarin matrix look like. So this is, so here. So this is the Mandarin matrix. So you click here.
明天我们要去玩。
So they can read along, and they can just follow the words to practice the word sound recognition. And they can go to the interactive page, and they can just, let's try this. So they can just drag and just link to the pictures that is correct, and they can just practice the word recognition with the pictures. Or they can just go here and they can practice writing. For example, like this one, like this tongue. It's slower, it's still pace for the kids. So they can just practice writing here. So they can practice writing. It's kind of cool, right? So, and last year, I also turned some textbooks into read-along videos. So let's give it a see.
妈妈。
蚂蚁卫兵，
So this is one of the books. Book 5. Book Unit
蚂
4.
蚁卫兵，我最勇敢。发大水了。
So the students really like to read along with this. They can use a really pretty short time to have us many repetition. And so last year, those students who consistently practice Chinese at home were thriving at the end of the year. Because it is, and I put their recordings in the YouTube. So if you're interested, you can go up and just check it out to see. And so do you remember the myth we talked about earlier, that if I don't speak Chinese, then I cannot help with my kids? Then actually, in my class, you just need to help them to set up Mandarin matrix. You just need to go to the YouTube video and just click button, right? And you just need to tell your kids, I love listening to you speak Chinese. You sound so awesome. And you can just tell him, I like you. I love watching you singing there. Just practice Chinese. I think that will give them a lot of motivation just to practice, right? And so our big challenge this year is that we have short Fridays. So the Friday is shorter, so we have less instructional time. And then last year, more than 5 kids in each class normally don't come, so we couldn't do new lessons. And actually, there's a lot to cover because all the flashcards on the walls, and Mandarin matrix, they have 10 units, and they need to pass the test on 42 Chinese characters before they move to the second grade. And I like to do the self-introduction, so it's more like daily conversations, easier for them to learn. So I think because we have so much to cover, so having your kids to practice at home is really essential. It's really helpful. And they can, because I think that if they don't not ready, they will go to the second grade unprepared. And the second grade teacher has my problems too. They don't have enough instructional time. So when they move to the third grade, they're going to suffer because the third grade textbook will be too hard for them because we didn't finish teaching that. See, so just encourage you to help your kids to practice at home. And there's another challenge. As you can see in my classroom, I don't have a sink. But we practice a lot, we speak a lot, so they get thirsty easily. And we have a locked door policy this year. So it's hard for your kids just to go out and knock on the door and come in. So I would encourage, it would be nice if you can just remember to have your kids bring a water bottle. And I think the bigger the better. Because the small ones, they can just, oh, I need to go refill.
So what happens if their water bottle is empty?
I think during the recess time, they can go and refill it.
Yeah.
Good question. Thank you. Okay. So today we've learned that what language learning is like for your kids. And we know that it is a collaborative effort to help your kids to be successful in this program and for the first year. Okay. And we also learned that Chinese practice is essential. This is not homework. It is neuron building time. It is getting smarter time, and it is Chinese proficiency time. I think you all want your kids to be like that, right? Be good at Chinese, right? Yes, okay. So do you have any questions so far? For me or for my husband? Any questions?
How do we access the program that you were describing where they write and read the book?
The Matrix. I think it's the Matrix.
I'll send the link to you when we're to that point. Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Okay. So last year, Mrs. Stoker's daughter actually was in my class, and she helped her daughter to practice every day. So her daughter was really good at Chinese, and actually she was one of the top students in my class. So I would like to ask her to share a little bit about how she helped her daughter to practice.
It's really no secret, but I've had 2 kids in immersion, and just, I think that you guys are all pros. It's just you guys create your own routine. Kids are very routine based. What happens, or what I like to do is they get off the bus right after school, I get them a snack, and we just, before they wash off school, we just do our homework. That's just what we do. Because the more time you let them relax, the more time they're like, I don't want to do it, I'm lazy. I'm not lazy, but I'm tired of school. So what I found out is if I just, hey, we're done with school, here's your school snack, you do your Boundary Matrix for 10 minutes and whatever homework, and we just get it done. Sometimes they're like, no, I don't want to make 10 minutes wasn't long enough. They wanted to keep going, and sometimes 10 minutes was like a year to them. But we just did it, and I saw the progress. I have a 7th grader that she's reading and writing in Chinese. She's writing journals in Chinese. It's really amazing, and so it really does work if you continue with the program.
Thank you.
And if you didn't get any paperwork over here, will you please fill it out and leave it on the back table for me? That would be great.
So if your kids hasn't found their desk or maybe the book, you can come to me. I can help them find it. Thank you for coming.